Hi everyone, welcome to the Next Level Finance podcast. Always have a special guest. We have got Sarah Brill, i.e. from Sarah Brill Coaching. Sarah, thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having
This
me.
is Series 2, Episode 6, and I'm sure the team will tell me if I get the number wrong. Right, we're going to get into this Next Level Finance podcast, and this is for those entrepreneurs that want to think ahead. Sarah, thank you for coming down. I really appreciate this.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and obviously everyone knows we love the hospitality. We'll be putting that, and hope you enjoyed the hospitality.
Thank you very much.
What we're going to be talking about, Sarah's going to be adding huge value, is the mindset. You're like, they call a money coach. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that the best way to explain it? Tell me a bit more about what the money coach is all about.
Yeah, so as you said, I'm Sarah Brill. I've been coaching for almost a decade now, and I've coached over 750 people, and now I help six-figure entrepreneurs who want to create abundance in their life with ease. So you could say money mindset mentor, financial coach, but I'm sure we'll dive into that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think, do you know what? It's quite useful that you understand for us to explain that, because a lot of people use these buzzwords, don't they, Sarah, about abundance and things like this. What does abundance mean for the audience who are watching it across the socials?
Yeah, so to me, it means a sense of overflow. It's, I guess, the opposite to abundance would be scarcity. And we all know that money is not about how much we have, it's about how we feel about money. Because you could be a billionaire and you could be very unhappy in life, and likewise you could not have a lot of money and actually be very fulfilled and happy. So it's all about how we feel about the money that we have. So it's about using that money wisely in a way that feels easy. When I say easy, it doesn't feel icky that we have that money or what we're going to do with that money. Everything feels like it has its place and its purpose. So it's with intention.
That's a great summary. So for me, I get from that is being comfortable with having or making money.
Yeah.
And secondly, trying to use it wisely.
Yeah.
And those are the key points. Love it. See, now you understand what abundance mindset is. And a lot of people ask me, Zee, what does that mean? Because it's used a lot. And I think you've explained it so well. Thank you so much for that. Right. Some of the things that we always talk about for the guests is to give a bit about the guests. So we're talking, and while we're having the nice food and all the rest of it, was around personal challenges.
Yeah.
And everyone loves this part of the segment. And the reason being is so we understand what Sarah Brill and what impact she's had and her journey, so she can then, well, people can understand how she's had it and how that relates to them. So one of the things I want to talk about is that you've mentioned one of the biggest things that you had in your personal challenges, setting boundaries. What does that mean for the audience? Tell us what you mean by that.
Yeah, so I guess well, I guess we're talking about personal challenges, but I'd say, yeah, setting boundaries in sort of the respect that you have for yourself, in the amount that you charge, in setting the boundaries when you're very generous and want to give a lot, but to build a successful business at the end of the day, you have to have boundaries in place. So I think for a while that was probably something that I struggled with, particularly in the early stages of building a business. And I think that kind of reflects back into sort of the rest of your life. It can show up in lots of different ways and how we do lots of different things as well. So I think specifically for me, things around charging, things around, it's not even charging, it could be things like invoicing, making sure people are paying on time, but more than that, how you actually empower yourself and have these difficult conversations. And it might not be in a business context, it might be about your partner with money, someone maybe have a few different bank accounts that they're not telling the other person about. It's very, very common, it's very common that people,
I think you're getting a lot of people in trouble here, especially the men.
Yeah, but I think it's important to have those boundaries in place. And from that place, you can then step into your authority as well. So
I think that's a really important thing, is trying to get that balance that the service that you're providing, they also getting paid for in a reasonable time, but also people knowing when you're providing the service what they get and what is off limits, and it's managing those expectations, isn't it?
100%, yeah.
No, really important, and also making sure they're telling you the full story. Sounds like it's quite important. I think one of the other bits that's talking to, and if you ever have a chance to speak to Sarah, her journey is quite amazing. Some of the stuff that you said that you've done, we were talking off here about, you've been obviously being restless and getting bored helped push you quite a bit. And I obviously go on a bit about it right now. You've been to a place like Dubai, or Dubai, whichever way you want to pronounce it, or I might say it properly, Myanmar.
Yeah.
I got it right, Myanmar. Tell us how you ended up in these places, because this has obviously helped you expand as an individual. You've had to relocate, which is massive things, and you did it in quite early in life as well. So tell me how you did that and how you overcome, and what were some of the big obstacles?
Yeah, so it's funny actually, because we didn't speak about when I first went travelling solo, which was when I was 18.
Wow.
And I went to Panama back in the days when we didn't have smartphones. And yeah, back in those days, I remember I landed in Panama. I told my parents I was going to ring them when I got there, and obviously there's no 4G, there's no 5G, there's no 2G at this point. So I had my little orange flip phone. So things were very retro. So ever since I can remember, even since the age of 11, I used to love just staying away, having the experience of enriching life with learning different cultures, getting, I think, perspective about how we live and what we actually want out of life to fulfill our purpose. And in some ways, I think became very important to me. And I grew up in the UK, I went to university in the UK, and for one reason or another, the jobs that I was in weren't quite right for me then, and I took a leap. I went on holiday to Dubai, and a friend said to me, there's amazing opportunities here, you should go and explore it. And that's what I did. And I told you the story where I printed off 100 CVs.
I'm going to stop you there. There's a really important thing here. So you've gone, this is about a decade ago, you were saying. So you went out there and you're literally doing a job you're not liking, and the exit was coming. So you said, sod it, I'm going to go abroad. You went on holiday, you took 100, print 100 CVs, and you thought, I actually like it here. And you went around. Tell the audience what you did.
Well, it was a friend of mine who said, there's a lot of opportunity here. The lifestyle is better. You should apply for some jobs. So I printed off 100 CVs, and I went to a place in Dubai called Media City. So in a past life, I used to work in social media, in marketing, and I started at the top of the building, this 70-odd story building, and I worked my way down, and I gave my CV out to as many offices as I could. I had conversations with CEOs, I had conversations with MDs, with directors, and by the time I got to the bottom, I had a job offer that was offering me double than what I was earning in the UK, and an invite back for a second interview for a company which I
Let me jump in there. By the way, income tax free, even a decade still now in 2024 as we're recording this. So you're getting double the salary and it's income tax free.
Yeah.
So really it's quadruple what you're probably getting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And how did you deal with that phone call? Where's you getting it on the phone? You're probably worried about answering the call because it's costing you.
But where?
Because when you got, did you have a Dubai SIM at that time, or did you still have your UK SIM?
I can't remember. So at that time, I think we were. Well, actually, you don't have WhatsApp in Dubai, so I think we were using. I think Skype was the thing at the time. I think we were Skyping.
Right.
Yeah.
Because now they've got it bottom, isn't it?
Now it's all Zoom.
No, they've got bottom. So I was out there recently.
Okay.
So WhatsApp doesn't work that well there.
Yes.
They don't like
It's
WhatsApp.
banned,
Just let you know. And when you're phoning it, you're like, what's going on? I don't know how they've done that, but they use something called bottom, BOTIM.
Yeah.
And as soon as I understood that, I was like, why am I paying £10 a day for this worldwide thing?
Yeah.
Did it up on the Google Maps.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. But,
so you got that going.
Yes.
You got a few calls, and next minute you got 2 job offers. Is that right?
Yep. So that journey in Dubai, or living in Dubai, I relocated, obviously my life, packed up a couple of suitcases, and unfortunately after 4 years, and I say unfortunately.
Just one step back, I want to ask is, Are you the only child or you got siblings?
No, I've got siblings. Yeah.
Sibling. So you got one sibling?
Yeah.
How did your family feel about you moving? Because this is for some entrepreneurs moving out there, or people who are thinking, look, employment jobs and all this stuff. Few aspects. One, having the guts to do it. Second, being able to execute what you're doing. Thirdly, convincing the people around you, especially, being a young lady, going out there. I'm sure your parents are like, oh, just going to another country. How did you convince them? Because I'm sure some of the audience are probably wanting to know what you had to say to convince them to make it happen. Or were they happy with you doing it?
Yes and no. It's interesting you say that, because I think children that grow up today, the world is very different. As I said, when I went travelling, I had a flip phone. And the revolutionary thing was that it was a colour screen, right? So I think by that point, I think my parents were very aware of the fact that I was a bit of an adventurist. I wasn't grown up. I didn't grow up in a generation where, when you're 8 years old, you have a tablet or a mobile phone. I used to commute halfway across London to go to secondary school, and I had a Nokia 3210. So it wasn't like it is now. I think maybe even sort of thinking about the way, my parents, generation grew up with our generation, coming just into that technological generation, I think perhaps there's a bit more of an understanding, a bit more freedom even, just around, okay, this is what you want to do. And actually now, the way the world is set up, it's so much easier to communicate. It actually doesn't matter if you're in Australia or whether you're in LA, you can still pick up the phone and talk, whereas maybe 40 years it wasn't possible to do that.
So your family were happy for you to...
I don't know about happy. I think they're a bit sad. I think they're a bit sad that I wasn't going to be around, for sure. But I think, particularly my grandparents, my grandma was always like, follow your nose, just follow your heart, what you feel, your intuition, what you feel is right. And if it's something, and if it doesn't work, then it hasn't worked and you come back, and that's okay.
Sounds like your grandma's quite inspirational.
Yeah.
So you've gone out there, you've got the job, Dubai, you've worked there 4 years, and then you thought, do you know what, I'm going to start travelling, and that's where you went to Myanmar, if I say that right?
Yeah, well, yes. So I guess backtrack. So just for context, obviously now, at the introduction, we said I'm a financial coach, but back then I was working in corporate. So this is also something I didn't tell you before, but I actually was I was quite senior in my job. I was managing the remit of the Middle East and North Africa for a company out there. And what ended up happening was I was traveling from Qatar. One day I was in Egypt, and one day on an event off the back of coming from Qatar, I was flying to Egypt, and I was hosting an event for a few hundred people in Cairo, and I actually fainted on the aeroplane.
Wow.
And I think when you're kind of in that situation, you're very stressed, it's very anxiety inducing. And when I returned back to Dubai, I went to the doctor, and they basically said to me, you're very stressed, and this is what burnout looks like. And I'd never really understood what burnout was, but I did know that I was exhausted, and I was, even though not performing at peak, I was at capacity.
Let me break that up, because this point actually is so important. A lot of people have different views on breakout or burnout, I should say, and how it affects the human person. Right? Is when you've had burnout, is it because were you enjoying what you were doing? Because I've heard a lot of people, burnout, whether it's right or wrong, isn't just whether you're working flat out, is whether you're actually enjoying what you're doing. Because, and someone said this, and I was actually thinking about, do you have burnout for people who actually love what they're doing? And they can work relentlessly. Yes. Do they get burnout?
Yeah.
Even if they really love what they're doing, they still get burnout? Because I don't see... You get people which they say they're enjoying it, but I don't know with how your mind, how your mind takes the stuff in, because burnout is where your mind is saying, look, I can't do no more of this.
Yeah.
And if you're enjoying it, it's like you go to the gym, it gives you get into psychology or not, right? But getting into your mind, it gives you like good hormones, right?
Yeah.
So you can do gym long as you don't go crazy and build too much weights and hurt yourself.
Yeah.
But it can be good for you, right?
Yeah.
Right. But if you do something that's really stressful and giving you a lot of anxiety, by definition, you're not really enjoying it because the stress related to it, right? You're doing it because you have to a certain point. You might not mind it, it's better than other stuff, but are you really enjoying it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, yeah, there's definitely truth in that. I guess burnout looks different for different people, I suppose. And for me, I didn't even know that there was like such a thing as physical collapse. I just thought it was, you know, like a mental thing. So I think it takes different forms. I think it shows up in different ways for different people. But yeah, that's just how it happened for me. And I think I was enjoying what I was doing, perhaps not how I was doing it.
Got it.
So I naturally enjoy talking to people, but maybe in the context of what that meant in terms of day-to-day work, I think that looks perhaps different. But so that's like our expectation of a job or a role versus the actual reality of day-to-day.
So your solution to this thing was, I've got to stop what I'm doing. I'm going to take a little break. Go.
Well, yeah.
Go on a break. Go to something totally different. Go, Myanmar, going to get this name right. Myanmar, you went there, which is a total difference to Dubai. You were telling me. Tell me the difference between Dubai and Myanmar.
Yeah, well, so after I got that burnout, as it happened, I got fired from that job for better or for worse. And I decided, as we were talking in Dubai, you have to pay for a year up front for your rent. Yeah. And so I was at a period where, you know, I didn't have a visa anymore. And then you can't get, you can't
You need
rent
to have a job
property.
to get the visa, right?
Exactly. So, I was in a place, in a predicament where it was coming up to Christmas. It was exactly this time, about 8 years ago. And I decided I'm going to go on holiday for 3 weeks to what was initially Bali. And I missed that flight and went to Sri Lanka and ended up in Myanmar, as you said. And I think all of those places I travelled in Asia was a bit of an eye-opener. You know, I think even in the UK, we see things with rose-tinted glasses. You know, we see the world in this very idealistic way, you know, and I think going from perhaps like a developed world and a developed culture to somewhere where maybe isn't so privileged is a massive eye-opener to what is important to people. You know, far beyond the money, you know, family, community is very important. And you really just go back to basics. You go back to the roots of like, you know, people are smiling, happy, they live on a beach, why would they not be? But other than that, you know, it's not always about the money and living this high life in Dubai. Actually, what is important to a lot of people is the sense of connection, community, spirit, freedom, and I think that's what we all on some level strive for. You know?
I think you've given a good contrast of probably 3 different cultures. Obviously UK, how it is here UK, and it's got its plus points and negative points as well. Then Dubai, which is another kind of version where it's got quite a high luxurious life. I think it's still the case, but it has also some other aspects are probably not the best as well, if we're going to be fair about it. And then you go to Myanmar, which is on a total other scale, but it's, even though it's not luxurious and you're just thinking about where you're going to eat food and things, but it gives you a balance of more inner side where you probably may not get that in the other places, because the community and the people actually forge better relationships because they have to rely on each other.
Yeah, and I think it makes you very grateful for what you have. It makes you feel very privileged. You know, the fact that you can even have a passport that takes you to these places is, you know, something I'm very grateful for, because it's allowed me to see this. But I think as well, it's also that piece around, you know, experiencing these cultures, but also meeting, I think, travellers or backpackers or people that go travelling to these remote places, the way that they think as well. You can learn a lot from not just the locals, but also people who put themselves out there in those types of environments that are a little bit eccentric or a bit unconventional in some way, I think that's where you really expand your mind and your frame of reference. So
I think it helps you build rapport because you've got so much experiences. I think that's the bit that I think is lacking a lot of times, people, because if you don't, I say this and move on, but one of the things I found is even going to university away from home. I went to Leicester, I lived in Hemel Hempstead in Hertfordshire, and I've got a lot of friends who didn't experience that, and they haven't expanded the way they think.
Yeah.
Because one of the things was living outside your comfort zone. And then that made me want to go and visit different parts of the world and understand their culture, try to understand where they're coming from, changes your perspective. And I think,
100%.
and that's why I think it's probably helped you. Hi everyone, sorry to interrupt the podcast. Hope you're getting a huge amount of value from this. Just going to be quick, 2 seconds. First of all, to let you know, in the comments below, we have got links to free business guides that can help you on your entrepreneur journey. They include exclusive footage from Sky TV episodes that I've done and a whole load of other content in there. Whether you're a growing business, property investor, property developer, or if you want to love the fun of SaaS pensions. Please do look at those. And if you still want more help, get in touch. The contact details are below. I hope you enjoy the podcast.
Yeah.
It leads you nicely onto the business challenges. Now you've done all this, you've got a few other places as well, which we love to talk about because we'll be here for ages.
We're doing another podcast.
I know, I think it's actually amazing. You ended up back in the UK. You're doing now, setting up your business coaching business, and you've got all these great experiences and knowledge on how to help people. Give me one of the challenges that you had in business. You said about perception of women, for example, successful women. Tell me what you mean by that. So, in relation to people around you and all the aspects.
Yeah, so I guess obviously, as we've just said, we were talking a lot about perception and when you move around the world. And I think as someone who comes with a lot of I don't want to say necessarily experience, but it's experience, it's observations about the world, it's deep understanding about the environment and things that are going on globally, not just in our individual society, so to speak. And I think when I came back to the UK, I was like, wow, I really want to empower people to just live their best life. I've had all this freedom, obviously I'm very good at money because I was able to do that for 4 years. I worked as dive master, freelance, and a few other things, but the ability and adaptability to be able to do that should be admired. It should be something that is celebrated, that we encourage people to innovate, to become their best version of their best selves.
Be careful if Sir Keir Starmer or Richard Reeves, Rachel Reeves, I'm joking, right? Rachel Reeves is watching this, because you're not considered working people. You think like that. You get a proper job, right? As in work for someone and...
Right, and this is what the perception is what I landed back to. Exactly that. And
did you notice that straight back even those years ago? Wow.
Yeah, so I remember it very clearly because I went round to a friend's and I was studying my diploma in transformative coaching, and we were sitting at the table and everyone was like, oh, Sarah, you've just come back from travelling. What are you going to do now? And I was like, I'm going to be a life coach. And everyone's like, but how can you be a life coach? How can you tell other people how to... Life coaching is not telling people how to live their life, but this was the perception. And look, whether that is in relation to gender or not, it might not be, but I do think there is a stigma, or there is a sense of playing small, shall we say, where when people truly speak up and say, I have this vision for myself, I'm successful in business, they are often hated on or they're put down, and that, as you said, stems from the very top. So
the interesting point that you're making is one of the barriers I see with entrepreneurs a lot is that the biggest obstacle isn't the people that they're trying to get clients or the external people, it's their friends and family, the people close to them, which is an eye-opener. It sounds like you had a bit of that as well.
Yeah.
How did you overcome that? Because I think a lot of the audience, from your perspective, those challenges, how did you do and what did you do to block those out?
Yeah, and to that point, I don't think it's necessarily just about failing in business. I think it's also about being successful in business. You know, you tell your partner, you tell your kids, parents, friends, I'm going to go out and make £1 million company. People are like, you know, who do you think you are? You know, you're not Mark Zuckerberg. You know, who are you to say that? So, you know, I think this in part is what builds the character of a successful entrepreneur, because you have to go through that phase, and you have to be resilient enough to know yourself, to know your purpose, to know your vision, and be strong enough in your own identity to create that for yourself. Because as you know, with money, no one's going to do it for you, right? No one's going to go out there. No one's paying your bills. No one has the drive like you have, and only you have control over that. So for me, I think it's innate. I'm just a very independent person. Maybe that doesn't come as naturally for people, but I think the most successful people can learn that skill and become more resilient in that way.
I think the last bit in the sentence that you meant about resilience is so key. And I think it's all in the mind, isn't it? And I think you highlighted that really well. How do you, from all this knowledge and all these challenges and traveling the world, she has lived a great lifestyle, right? And seen so much. How are you now helping others to start thinking differently? Because I see a lot of people, you know, who want to be successful. They don't always know the way to get there. They need some support on that journey.
Yeah.
Everyone, I recommend, has some kind of support, because it's so important. How have you helped others with these big stigmas and overcome that? Tell me how you've done that for some other people.
Yeah, so I think for a lot of people, we don't quite know why we think certain things about money. You know, obviously you made a joke before about, Keir Starmer or whatever, but I think a lot of these things, particularly in the UK, is very tongue-in-cheek, you know, and we make these jokes, but they carry weight, and we as humans just internalize all this overload of information that we see, whether it's like Reels or Instagram or LinkedIn, wherever it is. You switch on the news and there's some bad story, and I think we internalize this, and it actually defines the way we see the world, and it defines how we then show up. So for me, in coaching and money coaching specifically, it's about pinpointing where that's showing up for someone. What is it that's the root cause of this? And how is that then affecting how we show up and creating that friction that doesn't feel easy with money?
And I think you've hit the nail on the head, and that's one of the biggest criticisms for Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves. I was joking when I was called Richie Reeves, right? Is that they've got obviously some challenges, because they have this mindset of talking down the UK economy, talking down what success is. And it seems like they need a bit of help. Maybe little tag, put details in the comment box.
Managing procurement, yeah, hands down. We all know that from COVID. You know, that's not even a secret. That's on trial.
I think it's so quite important to have that mindset and mind shift. Now we're going to talk about some of the things that really define people's successes, because after you're doing all of these different things, one of the things that we have as human beings is we want to see how this led to your success. So can you sort of give a bit of an understanding, got some of the successes? One is obviously setting up in another country, being able to feel your passion, you know, and then obviously passion to empowering others. How has that really helped in your current success, and how you then obviously translate that to others?
Yeah, I guess I could even expand on that, because I guess there was a time when, you know, I had 10 Australian dollars in my bank account when I was travelling Australia.
Give me an example. What's that in pounds?
Oh, it's
exchange rate.
It's about £14-15, maybe a bit more.
What the dollars? The Australian dollars is more than, I think it's the other way, isn't it? pounds?
Sorry.
So-
Yes, it was about £8.
Seven, eight, yeah. So it's about one.
£7.
Right.
It
sounds
used
like
to be double, but it's
got
significantly got less.
Pound
yeah.
has got weaker.
But I mean, for context, at the time, I think a night in a hostel was 25 Australian dollars.
Wow.
$20. So I didn't have enough money for the night, and I took a train out and got a job. But I think that's the thing about being independent. I think part of success is taking the uncomfortable action. It's, feeling that resistance. But when you perhaps don't ask other people for money, I mean, look, there are, how can I say this? There are different money personality types, which we'll probably get onto. But I think the type of person that I am, I took that as sort of a bit of a power move to then step into that and feel that uncomfortable, and that's where we grow. And I think that's just empowered me, because I've realised it doesn't matter where you are in the world. I've worked in social media, I've worked in customer relations, I'm now a financial coach. I think whatever you put your mind to, if you're applied enough and you have the conviction, the belief, the tools and the resources to do it, anything is possible. And that is what I present to my
think
clients.
you mentioned before resilience and desire.
Yeah.
That can overcome so much, because that allows you to get all the gaps that you're missing and to get out there and make it happen. I think one of the other bits is another success is we love people who won some awards. You said something about a Shining Star Award 2024 you've been nominated for, right?
Yeah.
Tell me what it takes to get these kind of nominations and how that's helped you.
Yeah.
In your journey.
Well,
or
so
your entrepreneur journey, I should say.
Money personality, there's different types of people see awards in different ways.
Wow.
To me, talking about awards does not come naturally, but
Wow,
celebrities will love talking about awards. But yeah, it is something that I'm very proud of, because I think what it represents is the fact that I've been consistently showing up within a network. I've collaborated with people, we've referred business, we've supported each other, there's a sense of connection, and it can be isolating for solopreneurs, some business owners. They say it's lonely at the top, right? That's why they say buses have 50 seats and Lamborghini has 2, right? So they say it's a lonely place at the top. So I think when you are very ambitious, it's very important. And I think when you have that network and community around you, and then you're recognised for being part of that jigsaw and that fabric that support other entrepreneurs, to me is something that I'm very proud of. So we'll see what happens in December. Yeah.
Good luck with that. I know it's really good and it's achievement. I'm always in the school of thought, if someone's got an award or done certain stuff, they should communicate that, because that's success. It doesn't mean you're arrogant, it means you're confident, and also you've been rewarded, or people have shown that you've done something good. I think as a society we need to shift that mindset.
More, yeah.
Definitely recognise more. Totally agree. Next bit, one of the things that I always see with entrepreneurs that differentiates is their approach. So how do you approach, imagine you've got a potential client, and I know entrepreneurs will be watching this and they're like, how do you get business, and how do you build that relationship? Because that is the root of any business, having successful relationships with potential clients or clients. How do you go about doing that? Yeah,
and that is, even though I work with six-figure business owners, that is still one of the most common questions that I get asked. How do you get clients? Or maybe it's like the right type of clients. But yeah, for me, it's starting off with understanding someone, fully understanding who they are. For me, it's all about what they represent, what they value in life, what's important to them, because obviously we're talking about money here, but it's not about having £1 million in the bank. As we've said, to some people that might be about family, it might be about building a legacy, it might be about having a property or being able to travel or send your kids to uni or buy the nice car, whatever it is. For me, it's very important to understand, what that looks like in terms of their whole financial situation.
So just point that, so summarise, it's about their aspirations, understanding them, and then being happy to share those with you, so you can then think, right, that's what looks like a good outcome to them. Yeah, very much so. I think most people I speak to, I don't want to say they're quite happy to tell me stuff, but yeah, I think people do feel very comfortable and at ease with the space that I create
that's very nurturing, that's non-judgmental, just to be open and honest. I think I often say the 3 key things to being financially successful are honesty, a system, and motivation.
Wow.
So if you don't have honesty, if you're not honest about your financial situation, and to be honest, some people do come to a session and they're not completely honest, but it's because they don't have full clarity of their situation. So I think there's a difference there. But ultimately, it's about them then saying, right, what are these aspirations? And how do we fast track that process? How do we get you there quicker in a way that feels right for you, as opposed to taking someone else's strategy that's worked for them?
So that's what you were saying about the money mindset. So understanding this is what they want to do. How do we get there? If they did it by themselves, it may take 2, 3, 4 times along, or they may not even get there. You cut all that. You know how to do it. You've got a successful way of doing that. You understand, right, I can actually help them by tinkering a few things, changing how they look at things, especially money, and achieve them. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, pretty much in a nutshell.
Wow, okay,
So,
that is a unique skill set. That requires a lot of knowledge and understanding, and also being willing to work with that person to make sure they understand where the gaps are. Because if they could do that by themselves, or in a realistic time, they would have done it. They don't. So they have to be honest to understand they don't know, and they're open to ideas and that support and that advice.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest issue in the modern day. People are now becoming, and we'll touch it a bit later, there's too much information out there, and I think we're going to touch this later, and people just think by Googling it, they're getting there. It doesn't work like that. And I think we're going to touch this about what a typical client, that you've helped, and I think one of these will be one of those points, is, so one of the things that you mentioned is that you've helped many clients earning, say, 150k from their business or in their personal name. Tell me how you've helped people with that kind of scenario. They've turned up, they've got these numbers in place, so they're not starting from scratch, they've definitely got something going. Yeah. How did you help someone with those kind of circumstances?
Yeah, so I think, so just for context, just because you earn a certain income, it doesn't mean that is reflected in your bank account necessarily, right? So the first step is to see where where the money block is. Is it in earning more? Yeah. Is it like feeling like there's never enough? Is it feeling comfortable and responsible enough to manage that money? Or is it about the clarity of where do I put it and now what do I do with it? So I think when people come into a lot of money, and I think this is not talked about enough, it's really not talked about enough. We see celebrities that come into money overnight and they piss it away, and you can crop that out if I'm not allowed to say that on the podcast.
It's all good. This is the Next Level Finance podcast. You can say whatever you want. YouTube bleep it, that's down to them.
But it's true though, we don't talk about, because we conform to this, hierarchy in society that we were talking about. But I think, people need to be educated about what options are available to them. And that is very, very empowering, because when you come into money, there can often be a fear of, now I've made this much money, if I tell my friends, what are they going to think of me? Yeah. Or if I tell my partner how much I'm really making, or, oh no, like my employee just left and now I've got to hire someone else, and so my trust is lost. Who do we have these conversations about these dynamics with money with? And I think there needs to be a space where we're having these conversations where people who are making good money are celebrated for that, but not only that, aided on their journey of where and what is best to do with it. So I'm the person who then is sort of the mediator, I suppose, between perhaps someone like yourself, perhaps a financial advisor, to help them get complete clarity where everything is. Do they have any debts? Do they have any outstanding mortgage? What are their expectations for the next few years? How are they saving their money? How are they investing it? Where is it going? Is it in the right places? Are they even earning enough to cover what their expenses are? or is there some kind of blind spot there? So we go through
Wow.
all of that. If necessary, there are specialists like yourself who, are going to help my clients then with something specific like property, for example. But then I would look at, this whole picture of how that fits into what their aspiration actually looks like. So
I think it's just, there's so many facets, and it is how you work with someone, because that is the number one thing that holds people back, is what's there. I think one of the things that you mentioned, and we're going to touch it, is just because people are making or revenue, i.e. income coming in, doesn't mean they're actually making profit. And I think the issues people have issues with money, and it's linked to their mindset and their history. You mentioned quite a bit that you help people overcome this, because, and I was touching on it just a few minutes back, is people try to Google answers and all this stuff, and they get overwhelmed because one person says this, another person says this. They all might be the good answers, but they're relevant to the person's situation, which can only be assessed by someone who knows what they're talking about and understands how to evaluate. And I think that's the bit that you said you come up a lot of people with that, where they've not also being honest or not really understanding that they're probably making losses and things like this.
P&L, classic. People come into money and then buy a Porsche for their partner and they're like, oh, now my tax bill is here. Where do I get that money from? So look, I think for a lot of people, maybe there is education. Always, as we upgrade, as we up level, even when you get to 6 figures, maybe you get to 7 figures, at every level, there is always something new to learn. There is always something new to explore, and we can leverage the tools that are available to us in the right way. The challenge is knowing what those tools are. And I think that's the difference between, free or low cost advice or general guidance that's applicable to anyone and everyone, regardless of where you grew up in the UK, what shoes you wore as a kid, or whether you had the bike or not, and it's standardized. It's very much standardized. And look, society is being failed. Kids are going to uni, getting student loans and spending it before they've even lived out the term, and I think that then sets people up in a way that isn't conducive to then helping them be successful. So for me, it's about choosing the right specific guidance and advice to point someone in the right direction. And we know time is money, and so if people are stressed, if they're waking up in the middle of the night worrying about their finances, going out thinking I don't have enough money to buy my kids the ice cream, all of these things, but it's true, it doesn't matter how much money you make, you might be worrying about money in different ways. So I think there is a place to have specific information that is tailored for you specifically. And I think that's invaluable. I don't think you can put excuse the pun, I don't think you can put a price on that, because information, you can go on ChatGPT and ask any question that you want, right? You can find an answer, but is it necessarily right for you? Some people might love a Porsche. Some people might want a bigger house for their kids. Everyone values something different, and either is okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's being honest with yourself, and saying that little tax tip, you can have the Porsche in the car company if it's an electric one, right? So you're going to do a tax thing on that. But whether that's the right way to spend your resources depends on your situation, family, and getting advice and understanding around that is so, so important. I think the other bit, and I go on about this a lot, if anyone watches the socials that I'm on, is, and it's quite personal to me as well, is legacy. And you mentioned that you've helped certain people who have come to you and said, look, our legacy is really important. Tell me a bit more about how you've helped people with that specific area.
So legacy means different things to
it can be huge.
Different people. I think for me personally, when I lived in Dubai and you have all the luxuries and everyone has 2 cars and 2 phones and 2 houses, it becomes the norm, right? But when you escape out of that and, you see, what goes on perhaps in developing world and other countries, I think it gives you a bit of a grounding of like what really is important, what has meaning in this life, People don't want to talk about what happens after we die, but at the end of the day, we can't take the stuff with us. So I think for a lot of people, you know, after a couple of generations, maybe like your name is like not spoken of, you know, over and amongst your family. So I think for people who have a big vision, who want to have a legacy, it's the imprint that they want to, the mark that they want to leave on this world, right?
Yeah.
Whether they're charitable and they want to, you know, be Mother Teresa and support people by giving out food or whatever it is. I think it's a beautiful thing that people have their own sense of what their legacy is. And that may or may not be financially tied. Obviously, there are practicalities to that and things we can do to help fight that financial legacy. But I think it's also about, you know, where we spend our time, how we spend our time, how we're showing up, the community that we're in, all of these things. I think the intangibles, so to speak, I think is often what people strive for in terms of legacy. So I think, people really want to, you know, live out their best life, but have that memory of themselves in some way.
I think there's, as you mentioned, so much I can unpack that. There's so many aspects around legacy. I think one of the things when it's charity and things like this, I generally found, and they've done so many studies on this, where people give money to charity, not only can it be tax efficient, right, it's also, they get it back because it's been proven, which is quite mind-blowing. You give money because the world works like that.
Do you know why? So I had the idea that when you give money, when you give money, you become a problem solver. By very nature, you become a problem solver. So even if you're in scarcity and you feel like there isn't enough, the thing that you should do is help someone else. Because then you become a problem solver and your frame of reference, the way you see the world changes, because then naturally you're more inclined to think from the place of how can I now solve problems.
Wow.
Rather than what's this happening to me.
No one's explained it that way. I had another way. That is a great way of explaining it, by the way. I had it from a more religious perspective as well, that you know, in most of the major faiths, that when you give charity, there's a discussion around the Creator God, if you believe, gives back in another way, because people that are, but I think you put it into a way people could understand it and digest it, because you are a problem solver by definition. Great one, love that. And also I think you've helped, one of the other things is helped that legacy of the children as well, which is massive, because a lot of people don't realise that you need to invest, and that's what I talk about, in your children and in their education and things, because this gives you different types of satisfaction. And if you want that legacy, because what you're doing it for. And you made a great point, which I always say to people, we'll talk about this later, is around inheritance taxes. Have you met anyone that's left the world and come back? And they all look at me, Zee, did you say that? I said, yeah, have you? And they go, of course we haven't. So I said, where's the money going to go then?
Yeah.
So I think it's a loop, and it's just thinking about all those different aspects. Wow, mind-blowing. The next bit we're going to talk about is, I always have this in our segment these days, is tax fun, I call it, and it is fun when you talk about this. One of the things that you mentioned, and you really have helped people, is manage their personal tax aspects, because they're not aware when you're jotting up and getting that view on their personal finance, that overview over all the different stuff, they're not realising some of the problems they're creating and why they need probably some advice from people like myself, accountant, tax firm, but you have to show them, look, hold on. And I think you give me a couple of examples of that from you mentioning.
Yeah, so I guess, so where I sit, as I said before, sort of in between, or a facilitator if you like, but someone who sort of helps educate people around investing, what it means to be good with your savings, how to save efficiently, how to ultimately achieve your goals. I think a lot, or some of the time, I don't say a lot of the time, but some of the time, the tendency is to save money, stick it in an ISA, maybe, if you're lucky. Maybe you think about, I might need a little bit of an emergency fund, not quite sure how much that is or what to do with it. And so eventually we kind of get this overwhelmed. Like we said, there's so much information. There's 1,000,001 bank accounts. Which app do I download? Which one's the best? It sounds very complicated. The fees are very high. I don't really know what to do with it. And so we end up just leaving it in the current account. And I see it more than you would think. And what happens is either that money ends up getting spent or eaten away by inflation, so it's not worth as much. And sometimes even then, if you're a high income earner or even not a high income earner and you've just got money saved in the bank, you then end up paying personal savings tax, which is one of these grey areas that I'd say even in the past decade that I've been financial coaching wasn't so much of an issue pre-COVID. But now interest rates are higher. Pre-COVID interest rates are like 1%. You were never going to use your £1,000 personal savings allowance. But with interest rates 5.5%, you could have 20 grand and you're paying tax, right? Or you're running the risk of putting yourself in a position where you have to have unnecessary stress and headache.
I think you've hit a nail on the head, just for the audience on there. Being a bit of a tax advisor aspect, there's three parts.
Yeah, break it down.
Break it down, but you've highlighted a really big thing, because it is a problem, and a lot of people don't realise it, and unless they give that info, they don't report and have problems later. So there's three aspects. If I'm earning below, as we speak, in the basic rate, i.e. under 50,270, I get £1,000. I actually can get a bonus 5,000 if I know how to structure my income, but it's £1,000. Once you go over 50 grand, 50,270, it actually drops to £500. And then if I become, dare it to be additional rate over 125,000, it's zero. So, and the way to manage a lot of this is use your business. If you've got money that you do not need, loan it to the business and let the business, and there's certain banks that give you quite good interest, but just holding the money. And that's how we've told people to think like this. But it is, unless you identify and have people like yourself tell you, look, have you thought about all this? Because people are so busy, overwhelmed, they don't understand. Great tips. I hope you enjoyed that part. The next bit I think you've talked about, and really relevant, is company tax issues. You've had a lot of clients that have come to you who maybe not gone to their accountant, or depending on what service they've got with their accountant or tax advisor, it may be a very historical view rather than a forward-thinking view, which we advocate. Is they come to you and they're like, Sarah, I've got a bit of a problem here. How do I deal with it? What kind of problems have you seen, and how have you tried to help them with?
Yeah. Well, look, people have come to me in all different types of situations. Some people get to the end of the tax year or nearing the end of the tax year, and maybe, sometimes even the tens of thousands of pounds, either because they didn't know or underestimated how much they would need to pay in corporation tax, VAT, or they have spent that money. Because it hasn't been earmarked in the right way, like you said, in the right places. So I think there is sometimes a bit of neglect, and this links into, I guess, people's different money personalities. So I've spoken about this. So I do something called the Sacred Money Archetypes, which is better understanding your personal relationship with money.
Wow.
So there will be people out there who are very good at making money, but don't like looking at the numbers itself. Then you get the people who over-scrutinise all of the money and worried that there's never enough, and they're the ones that are probably setting monthly targets and probably increasing them, just to make sure they're covering everything. But there's 8 different archetypes, and I won't run it through here. We can share a link if people are interested. But
we'll put that in the comments, Sarah will share that.
Yeah, fundamentally what I'm saying is I think there's different ways that corporation taxes, or allowing for any type of expenses, might be a bit of a blind spot or ignored, and for people that can cause so much more stress than the actual tax itself, because then you have to be in a position where you're running from behind, you're paying things that have already happened in the past, and you're effectively living in the past in some kind of way. So it keeps you held back. And I think that is not a very empowering place to come from when you're in a business. And I think there is a lot of people who are in that position, probably more than people think.
I agree with you. I see it quite a lot, and
I
I think one of the things is getting a good tax plan and getting advice on it, and also making sure you get comfortable with money. And I think getting all that in the mix is huge. The other bit I want to touch is, and it's quite a big thing right now with the budget that just happened with our friend Rachel Reeves, called a few different things at the moment, is about people exiting from their business, because a lot of people create businesses and their payday is when they exit, so they have to have something called capital gains tax, and that's been hit recently. Have you had people who have been thinking about this in your journey now? Because obviously things are changing, especially if they're at that point where they've like, I'm finishing off with the business.
Yeah, so perhaps not in the same way as you, but I think perhaps maybe slightly different, not necessarily as a business exit, but yes, I think when people have assets, when they have made money, like we were saying, and you know, let's say you have disposable income now, you've paid all your staff, you've got your resources, the business is functioning, your cash flow is there, you've got money sitting left over, but you've used all your ISA allowances, and maybe you need the money before retirement. Where do you then put it? Well, you have to, well, maybe you know some tips or tricks, but you know, there might be situations where people that then put it backed into a corner where they have to then put their money somewhere to get it working for them, but ultimately it means they're going to be paying some form of tax when they take it out. But I'll throw that to you, you're the expert on this.
I think it really works hand in hand, getting them ready, getting their mindset prepared and being comfortable with money. I think there's a few different options, and I think I mentioned on this, and anyone who wants to know a bit more, put in the likes and comments below around is, on business exit, there's a few different ways out, especially if you've got a trading business, what I mean, like an accountancy, or you're selling some goods or services. You can exit using what we call, it's changed its name, but everyone still knows it's entrepreneurs relief, but it's called something different now, business asset disposal relief. The tax is actually going up. It was 10%, right? It's going to go up to 14% in April next year, 25, and then it's going to be 18%, and that's from the first million each. So if your husband and wife, that's 2 million. And then after that, it's going to be the higher rate of 24, which is going up from the current rate of 20 on assets to 24, which lines up with the property. That's one way if you want the money. But secondly, some people are smart, is they actually want to do something different. They want to transition. They can do structure it in a certain way and pay zero tax. Hope she's not watching. Still can do that, and that's restructuring your business, and it's smart. And I've had someone right now asking about this because they've had a big sale opportunity. But it's whether they meet the criteria because they didn't do it beforehand. So it's getting that advice, structuring your business as if, or when you're ready to sell, because you don't know when you could get an offer. So that's quite a useful way. And there's many other ways depending on what you're trying to do and who it's for. I think the last bit, and we're going to film part of the tax fun as we call it, is we mentioned about legacy, and I think one of the legacy is inheritance tax planning. And that's a big thing again now after the budget, because if I had a trading business before, I didn't have to worry about it because I used to get business property relief, unlimited. And it's not just affected the farmers, it's affecting normal trading businesses. Now it's limited to £1 million, which we're waiting for the ins and outs of this. I think it's going to be quite scary. Have you had any people asking you, oh, how do I plan this in when I want to pass it to my children? Or, you know, because obviously that's when they passed away on death. Have you had any challenges on that?
So I guess that there have been instances, I think, I'd say most of my clients probably have children. So for them, the bigger concern might be sort of around the children and what happens there, family politics and all of that. But you know, I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? We all laugh about it, and people don't like talking about it, which is a bigger issue in and of itself.
It's huge.
For me, it's about encouraging people to get the right advice that's suitable for their circumstances, and to know that planning for the future is something that is beneficial to them as much as they might want to put off today and not want to think about now. So yeah, I think for someone like you who has expertise in the space, so I come from the perspective of making sure someone has all the insurances in place, all their wills in place, and you would present them with
I think, but insurances and things are also a solution. There's so many different solutions depending on what they're doing. But I think one of the things you just mentioned is whether they want their children to take over and whether they trust them, because you can set up different structures. So if you're a property entrepreneur, you had everything, day one was in scope, so you had to do that anyway. And we set up something called family investment companies, and there's a whole complexity around that. But that was to put this outside their estate. Now trading businesses, there's a few different options that you can actually do more with trading businesses because they're trading, right? You can actually gift the shares over without triggering tax off and claim something called gift relief, and provided you don't call it a day.
What is the threshold for gift relief? I'm
If you give relief, there's no threshold.
Okay.
In case of shares, I emphasise that. With property, it's different.
Yeah.
So if I've got it in a limited company, right, and I've got a trading business, I can gift whatever I want at the moment. I'm actually not watching, right? And as long as it's 7 years, and then it's on a scaling scale, as long as you don't pass, it's outside my estate after 7 years, or in a scaling down figure. So, and you can claim something called gift relief to protect you against capital gains tax in your life.
Yeah.
That's only on trading businesses. Investment businesses, if you gift shares, you have the 7-year rule, but you also have an issue because it's considered a deemed disposal capital gains tax. So you have a different problem because you can't claim the relief of gift relief.
Yeah.
So you have to get the planning. So there's an opportunity there, and it's just getting advice. What do you want to do? How do you want to do it? Or you can set up a family investment company structure where you get them involved and take that outside your estate. So you need to know business valuations and loads of different things. So there's a lot of opportunities now for people to do that. Didn't have to worry about it before. So we've got clients coming to us and it's like, what's this mean? I'm like, we've got a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah.
As we said, there's so much. Sarah, it has been amazing, and I've got to say the hour we spent is gone so quick.
Yeah, it has.
And you've covered so much. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it. And I know the audience will love it. That was the Next Level Finance podcast, Series 2, Episode 6 with Sarah Brill. We put her links and everything in the comments below. The team will do. If you want to reach out to her, she can help you a lot on your journey, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much. Hi everyone, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the podcast. We're doing this to add value to your entrepreneur journey, which is have a quick catch up on this, is that just to remind you, we've got free business guides in the comments below. They got huge value in them for property investors, property developers, SaaS pensions, and if you've got growing trading business as well. If you, after you consume those guides that have got exclusive Sky TV episodes in them, please do get in contact with us. The contact details are there, and we can help shape your entrepreneur journey and unlock financial freedom. Thank you so much.